My mom looked me in the eyes when I was 18 and said my pain wasn't her problem. Years later, she came back begging for help, and what I did next changed everything. Stay till the end, because silence became my revenge. My name is Emily, and I am 32 years old. I'm telling this story now because for a long time, my voice didn't matter to anyone. I learned very early how quiet pain can be when the people who are supposed to protect you decide not to listen. Growing up, I truly believed my family was normal. I believed my parents were my safety net. I believed that no matter how bad life became, my mom would always choose me. That belief shaped my childhood. It made me feel brave. It made me feel secure. And that's why what happened next destroyed me so deeply. I was 18 years old when my life split into a before and an after. That morning, I walked into a hospital alone. I remember the smell of disinfectant, the cold chairs, the way my heart wouldn't stop racing. I kept telling myself it was probably nothing serious. By the time the doctor finished talking, my hands were shaking. The words felt unreal, like they were meant for someone else. A diagnosis. Treatment. Uncertainty. Risk. All I heard was fear. The first thing I did was reach for my phone. I called my mom. Straight to voicemail. I told myself she was busy. I called again. No answer. I sent a message saying I was scared. I waited on a hard bench, watching families walk past me together. Mothers held their daughters' hands. Fathers whispered comfort. Every second felt heavier than the last. Hours passed. My phone stayed silent. When evening came, I walked home alone, feeling smaller with every step. My chest hurt, not just from fear, but from the realization that I might be facing this by myself. When my parents finally came home, I gathered all the courage I had left and told them everything. I explained the diagnosis. I explained the treatment. I told them I didn't know what to do next. My dad avoided my eyes. He didn't say a word. My mom stared past me, like I wasn't even in the room. Then she spoke, and her words cut deeper than anything the doctor had said. This is not my problem. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't sound angry. That was the worst part. Her calm made it clear she meant it. In that moment, I understood something terrifying. My fear didn't scare her. My pain didn't move her. My future didn't matter to her. I went to my room that night and lay awake staring at the ceiling. The house felt colder than ever before. I realized I wasn't just dealing with an illness. I was dealing with abandonment. That was the night my childhood ended. That was the night I learned that love could disappear when you needed it most. That was the night my life cracked, and nothing was ever the same again. After that day, life at home became unbearable. It wasn't just the absence of comfort, it was the presence of something far worse, indifference. My parents were physically there, but emotionally, I was completely alone. Every morning I woke up, I felt a weight pressing down on my chest, a silent reminder that no one cared what I was going through. My mom and dad continued their routines as if nothing had happened. Breakfasts, small talk, laughter, it was all for show, for anyone but me. I quickly realized that my pain made them uncomfortable. Whenever I tried to speak about how I felt, I was met with silence or impatience. When I cried, I was told to stop being dramatic. My illness was never treated as something serious, it was treated like an inconvenience, something that embarrassed them. So, I learned to take care of myself. I got a part-time job, working late nights to pay for my own medication, my own doctor visits, my own survival. I studied during the day, barely sleeping at night. Some mornings, I woke with my body so exhausted I could barely move, yet I forced myself to carry on because resting felt like weakness in a house that had no space for weakness. I hid my medicine in my bag, like it was something shameful, and sometimes I took it in secret, in a corner of the house where no one could see me. At the same time, I watched my parents perform the version of life that didn't include me. They smiled for visitors. They laughed at dinner tables. My mom cooked elaborate meals for guests, wore her best clothes, and acted like a perfect parent. But the moment the door closed, I disappeared again. That version of love was never meant for me. One night, I overheard them talking behind a closed bedroom door. I wasn't trying to listen, but my name floated through the wall like poison. My mom said I was too much. She said my situation made her anxious and uncomfortable. My dad said ignoring it was easier than facing it. That was the moment I realized the full truth. Love in my house came with conditions. Be perfect, be easy, be quiet, or don't exist at all. Then came graduation day. I woke up with a mix of hope and dread. I wore my cap and gown, rehearsing smiles in the mirror. I searched the crowd over and over, expecting them to show up at the last second, but they didn't. When my name was called, the silence around me was deafening. Families cheered for their children. Cameras flashed. But for me, nothing. When I came home that night, broken and exhausted, there was a note on the kitchen table. My mom had written that distance would be better for everyone. No explanation. No conversation. Just rejection on paper. That note didn't just end my childhood. It taught me the hardest lesson I've ever learned. I was only loved when I was convenient. And in that moment, I stopped expecting love from the people who were supposed to give it freely. I didn't cry the morning I left. That surprised me. I thought leaving my family, the only home I had ever known, would feel like ripping my own heart out. But the truth is, my heart had already been broken, piece, by silence, neglect, and rejection. That morning, leaving felt like finally breathing after being underwater for far too long. I packed one small bag, clothes, documents, a little cash, everything I thought I might need to survive. I left my phone on my bed, turned off. No messages, no explanations, no chance for them to convince me to stay. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't look back. My room was filled with memories, but memories couldn't keep me alive anymore. I walked out before sunrise. The streets were quiet, the sky still dark, and every step felt surreal, like I was watching someone else live my life. For the first few weeks, survival became my only focus. I moved to a city where no one knew my face, my name, or my story. I slept on a friend's couch. I took any job I could find. I washed dishes in restaurants, cleaned offices late into the night, and carried exhaustion like a permanent weight. Some nights, I cried quietly, covering my mouth to hide the sobs. I felt completely invisible, alone, and vulnerable, but there was also a strange sense of freedom. Pain followed me everywhere, but it changed shape. It became fuel instead of weakness. Every time I remembered my mom's calm voice telling me my pain wasn't her problem, every time I remembered that note on the kitchen table, I felt my resolve harden. I would never go back. I would never let myself depend on them again. Months turned into years. I finished my studies while working multiple jobs. I built a life from scratch, brick by brick, with no one to rely on but myself. I learned how to trust myself. I learned how to handle fear, loneliness, and exhaustion without asking for help. I became someone stronger than the girl who had begged for love and received only indifference. I erased my old life carefully and deliberately. New phone number. New address. New routines. I wanted to disappear completely, to leave no trace of the girl who had been abandoned. In doing so, I discovered something powerful. Survival is not weakness, and sometimes, disappearing is the only way to reclaim your life. By the time I looked back, I realized I had built more than a life. I had built freedom. I had built strength. I had built myself. And in that disappearance, I became unrecognizable to the girl I used to be, and unstoppable in a way I had never imagined. I wasn't looking for my parents when I found them again. Life has a strange way of resurfacing the people who once caused you pain, often when you're finally strong enough to face them. It happened one evening while I was reviewing files at work. I froze when I saw a familiar last name appear in a public record. My chest tightened in a way I hadn't felt in years. My parents. The record didn't lie. I saw unpaid medical bills, mounting debt, and legal notices. The same system that had once seemed cold and unreachable to me was now closing in on them. For the first few minutes, I stared at the screen, waiting for some old, familiar guilt to creep in. But nothing came. Instead, memories surged through me, the hospital bench where I had waited alone, the unanswered calls, my mom's flat voice telling me my pain wasn't her problem. In that moment, I realized something I hadn't understood before. If this had happened years ago, I would have rushed to help them without a second thought. I would have sacrificed my own peace to rescue them. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I had survived, rebuilt, and hardened myself. I had learned that love without reciprocity was not worth giving. I arranged a meeting through professional channels. I didn't call them directly, and I didn't warn them. Everything had to be official, structured, and impersonal. I had learned to keep my emotions in check, and this would be no exception. The night before, I barely slept, not out of fear, but anticipation. I wanted this meeting to be final, and I wanted to be in control. When they walked into my office the next day, I saw recognition in their faces immediately. My mom froze. My dad looked like he wanted to vanish. Their pride, which had always come first, had vanished under the weight of desperation. I greeted them politely, introducing myself formally, the same way I would introduce any client. My voice was calm, even, and controlled. My mom tried to apologize, stammering out sentences about fear and regret. She tried to explain why she had abandoned me, how she hadn't known how to handle my illness. Tears filled her eyes as she pleaded for my understanding. I listened quietly, letting her finish, letting her words hang in the air. Then I felt something I had never felt before, power. Not cruelty, not revenge, but control. I reminded them that exceptions weren't possible. Resources were limited. Policies had to be followed. Every word I spoke was accurate, professional, and final. Before they left, I repeated the sentence my mom had once spoken to me when I needed her most. This is not my problem. I didn't yell. I didn't gloat. I simply watched them leave, faces crumpled in frustration and shame. That moment wasn't about vengeance. It was about balance, about finally standing on the side of strength instead of pain. For the first time, the tables had turned, and I no longer had to beg for love, compassion, or attention. I had earned my justice in silence. I thought walking away from that meeting would feel heavy. I expected guilt to shadow me, to sit beside me in the quiet and ask if I had become cruel. But none of that happened. Instead, I felt calm, a deep, steady calm that only comes after surviving storms that nearly destroy you. For years, I had imagined what justice would look like. I thought it would be loud, filled with shouting and tears, a dramatic confrontation that would satisfy some inner hunger. I was wrong. Real justice didn't need noise. It didn't need witnesses. It didn't need approval. I didn't destroy my parents. I didn't humiliate them. I didn't seek revenge out of anger. I simply stopped saving people who once refused to save me. That boundary, that refusal to sacrifice myself for those who had abandoned me, became my victory. When I returned home that night, I sat alone in my living room, letting the quiet wrap around me like a warm blanket. The soft light, the still air, and the sense of safety felt foreign at first, almost uncomfortable. But slowly, I let myself breathe. I looked around my apartment and realized everything in that space existed because of me, my work, my choices, my perseverance. No one had handed me this life. I had fought for it, brick by brick, moment by moment. For a long time, I carried shame that never belonged to me. I blamed myself for being sick, for needing love, for being abandoned. That night, I let all of it go. I understood something crucial: my parents' choices were never a reflection of my worth. Their fear, their selfishness, their inability to care, those were theirs, not mine. I no longer wait for apologies that may never come. I no longer hope for closure from people who couldn't show up when it mattered. My closure came from myself, from the knowledge that I had survived, rebuilt, and reclaimed my life. I had been invisible for so long, and now, I existed fully, for myself. I tell this story not to relive pain but to honor the girl who survived in silence. The girl who disappeared so she could live. The girl who learned that love should never be conditional and that sometimes, disappearing is the only way to save yourself. My mom abandoned me when I needed her the most. That truth will always exist, but it no longer defines me. I define myself. If you're watching this and feel invisible, unwanted, or abandoned, hear me clearly, walking away is not weakness. Walking away is survival. Walking away is reclaiming power that was once stolen from you. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I didn't chase revenge. I chose peace. I chose myself. And that choice, quiet, unshakable, final, changed everything. Sometimes, silence is louder than any scream. Sometimes, walking away is the strongest revenge. And sometimes, justice doesn't need a witness.